Welcome everybody to the Kim Barrett Show. I am your host, Kim Barrett, and on today's episode, we have Mr. Justin Dry of Vinomofo. Now, Justin is an absolute whiz when it comes to two things, business and wine, right? He is amazing. We cover off some of his story about how he grew his business with some wine chat in between as well. Now, there's many interesting things in this one, and I've got to say, I want to go back and I've listened to it again and again after this chat because there's been some really cool insights. So I highly encourage you, if you're someone who's interested in finding out how these guys not only grew a huge company here in Australia and around the world, but also how did they create partnerships with some of the biggest wine names literally around the world as well, in some of the countries like France, Italy, Australia, and some of the real specialist wine regions. So it's safe to say it's a really cool chat. Now, I highly encourage you to share. If you know someone else that loves wine, maybe just loves drinking wine, or someone who wants to chat about growing a large business, this is going to be one that you will not want to miss. So of course, if we can help you grow your business with marketing or advertising, you can always check us out over at www.mogulcall.com, there to help you if you guys need. But without further ado, let's jump into the show.
Justin, thank you so much for making the time to chat to us today. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here, buddy.
It's great to have you. So I always like to start my podcast off with the same question for everyone, which is, if we bumped into each other at a party and we were just chatting with each other and it was just a general conversation, and I said, Justin, what is it that you actually do? What is your go-to answer?
I don't actually have one. I basically run an online wine retailer called Vinomofo. We operate in 3 countries. It was launched in 2011. Been one hell of a ride. We've won, the fastest growing tech company in Australia. We've won a bunch of awards early. We raised some money. We made some mistakes. Learned that your role as a founder changes a lot over time. From doing everything to being more specialized to being a leader of people. And it's been, it's been a very big learning experience. Plenty of mistakes made, but plenty of good stuff too.
I love that. Now, I want to dive into one of the things there, because you said obviously fastest growing tech company, right? Which a lot of people probably wouldn't think when they think of Vinomofo, when they think of wine. Can tell us a little bit, how did that come about?
That was actually, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because most companies are tech companies now, I guess, in that same light. But we got nominated, and Matisse is 4 months old, so we're just getting through the sleeping thing, sidetracked completely. That award was by Deloitte. So Deloitte run this thing called Tech Fast 50. And so it's nominated by them. They look at the growth rates over a 3-year period. So it's really their criteria. We got nominated for that, and we ended up winning that in, I think it was about 2016. 15, 16. And, and we've been on it probably 4 or 5 years in a row, so over those next kind of years. And so it was a great award to win. I mean, we'd won lots of things like, best startup, best online, player, best social initiative, a whole bunch of things. But that one was quite a big one and quite a serious one. And it kind of took us to a new level in terms of that, because we've been such a startup and we've been so involved and connected to the startup community. And that was the first kind of, I guess, award that was from, a much more kind of corporate, big traditional player. And so we've become on the radar of that kind of circle. So that was interesting. And that's, I guess, tech company. Yes, tech enabled, I guess. We're all kind of tech companies now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. I'm just always interested because, I consider what we do. We're Facebook and Instagram ads, kind of techie in that space. So it's always just interesting to see how they kind of categorize things. And for me, but so take us back to when you got started. So what was it that got you started into going down this track to building now what's from all purposes, tremendously successful company? What made you, why was it the love of online? What kind of drove you to get things started?
Yeah, look, wine was a big part of my life. My ancestors planted some of the first vines in the Barossa, so I guess it was in my DNA.
Oh.
Force-fed wine at family gatherings from uncles that were in the industry. My immediate family wasn't in the industry. They definitely loved wine. But I was kind of force-fed these Christmas events where I was only like 14 or 15 at the time, so completely wrong, but right at the same time. And they would get me to do like blind tastings, like, tell them variety, region, vintage, and they'd guide me through it. I had no idea, but I learned through that. And then by the time I was 18, I was a full kind of wine nerd. So I ended up studying at uni. I worked in the industry for quite a few years. And then at about 23, decided that maybe it was a passion, not a profession. Thought I'd check out some other stuff. I'd always been interested in business. My, dad was, back then it was more like kind of probably called salesman, or saw the ups and downs of that. And so I was always interested. We were always talking about business in our family. I guess I was an entrepreneur, plus I was also interested in wine. So those two things kind of coming together. I left the industry at about 23, became a stockbroker. That was about the time of the tech boom, the late 90s. So everything I touched turned to gold, which was nice. And then I was still there in the early 2000s when it all came crashing down. So I didn't look as smart. And then I left that and did property development. I bought some land, no money down, and convinced the guy to give me the land and pay him much later. I built 15 places on that land, sold them all off the plan, and then built another 28 on the land next door. Then that got a little bit tricky. I signed as a guarantor for someone I really cared about, and that didn't end up very well for me. So after making all the money in my 20s, I lost it all. I had to start again. That was about the time I decided to get back into wine, probably because tasting wine at that time seemed like a good idea. And the first one I got back into was online, and it was called Quaff, and that was in 2006, and that was like a Facebook for wine. Built up quite an audience, but the business model sucked, and so I didn't really make any money. First Christmas, I think, when we had that company was like $30,000 before expenses between two people. So pretty average Christmas. Rolled that into another business, which was a great Australian wine adventure. We did another one called Road to Vino, which was us traveling around in a combi, tasting wine and surfing. And we filmed it and turned that into a show. That was some of the great times. And that all then rolled into the final one, which we're talking about, which is Vinomofo. And that came up with this idea in about 2010, rolled all those three businesses into it in 2011. And this one really took off.
When you would then started Vinomofo with all that other sort of stuff behind you, what was, because obviously, I mean, for anyone, so you're really like an aggregator. You bring all of the different wines that people can choose from together. And obviously, as you say, you do a pretty good job of putting some really nice wines in there as well. Ken Blowford, who leads my sales team, he's a fan, and I think he spends half of his commissions on wine. He's got the chosen selection for us in the office. And then I was asking him about this the other day as well when we were talking about it. I was like, what was the first deal when you go, cool, we want to provide these great choice of wines? What was one of the first deals that you went, cool, we're going to go try and get this wine to come on board with us? And how did you negotiate that deal?
We built great relationships through the previous years and businesses with the producers. We'd always focused on small to medium producers. They were the ones we were most interested in. The show Road to Vino was us traveling around that combi. Like basically we were sleeping on people's couches, having long lunches with them, drinking way too much wine, getting really connected with the people that were living and breathing the industry, and they became some of our best friends. And when we were starting that show, we identified who we wanted to hang out with. Basically, we're just a couple of wine nerds that were fanboying on all the legends of the industry. So we were like, all right, who are the legends that we want to get to know and hang out with and hear their stories, and who are the small up and coming rock stars? And so we did this giant list. We asked them to be on the show. We traveled in the combi, and we got to meet them through that. And through that kind of journey and the other businesses, we built up this great network of producers. So when we wanted to sell wine later on, we just called our friends basically, and we were like, all right, so we want to focus on small to medium producers, people that actually give a shit about what they're doing, so premium to super premium wine. But we introduced that model of like daily deals. That's how we started. So we were selling these amazing wines at prices that people had never seen before. The only way we could do it was because we had such great friendships with these wine producers. And so the first one we did was a Gem Tree, McLaren Vale Shiraz. We had, a few lined up before we launched because we had to get ready. And it was only a deal a day at that stage. So, now we've got hundreds of wines. So it's not, it's still super curated because there's, 2,500 producers and, probably 10 or whatever wines each. So there's lots of wines available in Australia, and we only ever feature like 100 to 200. So it's super curated, but still it's a lot more than what we started with, which was one single deal a day. It was so funny though. At the start, we're like, I wonder if this is going to work, because we've never really done like the model we get, and it's working. It globally, you can see it in other industries, not in our industry. So we were the first in our industry to do that. And so then we were going, I wonder if this actually worked. We've got this great audience that love wine. They're a younger kind of demographic. They are very aligned with our brand, which is we love wine, but don't be a wanker. Like no bow ties, no BS. But you can be passionate about wine, but just don't be a wanker. And that's kind of the brand. And so we're like, we've got this great audience. We've got a great network of producers. I wonder if people will actually buy through this model. And then the first day we launched, we sold out like super quickly. And we'd sold more wine in that one day than we'd sold in the previous business within a month, And so then we're like, I wonder if we've maxed out our list. And so we did the next deal the next day, and then that sold out again. And that was even more. And then we're like, certainly, like we've maxed out our list now. And then the third day we sold even more again. And we're like, oh my God, this is crazy. What is happening here? And it just kept going up and up and up. And then, we hit our first $100,000 a month. Then it was our first $100,000 week. And then it was just a crazy ride early. And we got lots of PR, got lots of attention. Our biggest growth in customers was through referral, because people were loving it so much. It was just a really interesting, fun, challenging, crazy period.
That's amazing. And I think it's very important what you said there, which is obviously like, because I think some people jump into businesses or industries and they go for it kind of cold. And as you said, like you already built up not only the relationship with the producers, but also the relationship with the audience that wanted, like that were interested in that as well. So you kind of almost had like a pretty much a perfect storm, right? Where you had both sides that you had their attention.
Yeah, exactly. We brought together a network of producers, an audience, and then a business model. And those three things, when they kind of came together at the right time, worked for us. And it's one of those funny things where I think not knowing a space or an industry can be really good, because the ignorance there can make you challenge traditional thinking. So that's great. But then also building up relationships and understanding the industry to a degree is also really powerful. So it's like we had this nice kind of middle point where we didn't know it enough to know what you didn't do, and then we knew it enough to have the contacts and the audience. So it was one of those kind of things. I think there's so many things that go to being successful in business, but a big chunk of that is timing and luck. We've all got to work hard. That's just a prerequisite to achieving anything. But outside of that, there's a lot of luck and timing, and Vinomofo was the perfect storm.
Yeah, no, I love that. And what about when obviously you're getting the producers on you already built relationships with, was there, after you started, was there any producer where you were just like, yes, like that's my ultimate kind of fanboy high five moment when you got them on board and you were like, I always wanted to get to do something with them, and you managed to bring them in?
Yeah, there was lots of those moments actually, because I've loved wine for so long that there's so many producers that I've got a really good connection with. I think early, there was like many. One of the most kind of famous deals we did early was with Penfolds, and it was a Saint Henri. And they're not like a small to medium; they're kind of large producer, but I'm probably on the upper end of medium to large. But their Saint Henri is a delicious wine, and it had a special place in my history just through events where I drunk it. Whether it was a family gathering or a birthday or an anniversary or whatever that was. And so when we got that, we did probably 3 or 4 deals with Saint Henri, and it was half price, and it was a secret deal, so no one knew. And then it was really special for me because everyone else was selling it at that stage. This was years ago. Most people were selling it for about $90 or $100, $110. And I think we sold the first one at $45. And so it was a secret deal. No one knew what it was when they ordered it, and then it turned up at everyone's houses, and they were like, "Oh my God!" And we're like, "Yes, that was a nice moment." And then there was lots of kind of small cultish producers that we did. Clarendon Hills was one of the kind of highlights for me. We did a back vintage of that. It was a 99. It was a Shiraz. I think they called it Syrah, which is the same thing, but just different name for the variety. It was a Leandra, I think, Syrah, and it was 1999. We sold it at like half price. And we sold it all out really, really quickly. And I bought a couple of 6-packs for myself, and it became a wine that I opened up with my 2 best mates for many years, special occasions. And it wasn't probably the greatest wine I've ever had, but its connection to, 1, it was a great producer, an interesting producer that was highly sought after. 2, it was this back vintage. And 3, it became a wine of a moment. which was my best mates and I sitting around a dinner table talking shit and just connecting, So it was like one of those kind of really special moments too.
I love that. That's cool. I love the story. The stories behind it. And I think with anything, it's like, as you say, it does tie it to a moment. And I remember it probably has been one of the better wines that I tried, but I got a bottle. I'm a big fan of contra deals. So I did a deal with a client where they needed some work done for a messenger sequence and bot and things like that. And they said, look, I don't have whatever the price was, but I do have a bottle of Penfolds Grange. Like, can I use this to go towards it? And I was like, yes, you can. Of course. Like, I'd be foolish not to take that deal. So I took that, and that was my 30th birthday. My dad and my brother were sitting here, and we drank. And like, I was like, well, they're all like, well, Dad's not a huge wine person. He doesn't mind it, but again, he's, it's normally probably the maximum he's ever spent on a bottle of wine is $20.
Yeah.
So we got this one and we poured it out, and my brother and my dad are sitting here like literally around the kitchen table, and I was like, this is ridiculously good. So that's like etched in my memory. Again, doesn't really matter the value of it, but it like ties me back to that moment every time I see or hear someone talk about Penfolds or Penfolds Grange. It like immediately brings me back to that moment.
Yeah, it's one of those beautiful things about wine, I think. The moments, it's a nice kind of reminder of special moments in your life. Like I'm the same. I had a Penfolds Grange for my 18th birthday. It was I gave up my birthday, which my parents said that they'd pay for and would have a few kegs, and my friends come over, would do it at my parents' house, and I said, hey, do you reckon I could use all of that money into one bottle of wine? Really want to try it. So I got my birth year. I remember walking into the store to buy it, and I don't think they could believe, one, I was old enough, two, that I could afford it. And so it was so exciting carrying it back to the car. I was holding it with two hands to not drop it, because it was the most expensive thing I'd probably ever held. And it was a really special moment sitting around, and, I opened it, decanted it, and every, 15, 20 minutes, I'd walk past the decanter and smell it as it evolved in the decanter. And then I just had it with my parents, and they cooked a really nice meal. And I still remember that night really, really well. It's just funny how wine can do that. It can bring you straight back. And, you've got that part, which is really beautiful. And then the other part is that, you're bottling a moment in time with wine, like a particular year. I remember hearing a great story by one of the great champagne houses, and we tried like a really old vintage of champagne, and it was from the First World War. It's like there was some crazy stuff happening in their country, and there they were picking the grapes to make the champagne, and it's a bottled moment. And it evolves in the bottle, which is amazing as well. But it's just, you're capturing this moment in time. I think it's really special, and you can get really carried away with how romantic and beautiful that is. But I love it.
Being that you've tried a huge and probably tremendous array of wines, and obviously there's the moments with wines, there's everything that goes with it. Is there one where you've just said, like, look, if you believe this has been the best, like just purely on taste, this has got to be one of the best tasting wines that I've ever had?
Yeah, I get that most days. I love Barolo and Barbaresco, which is from Piemonte in North Italy. I drink those as my kind of special occasion wines quite regularly. And also Chardonnay, some great Chardonnays out of Australia, but also out of Burgundy in France. They're really, really special. I still remember the first kind of serious Burgundy I had was at a restaurant in Sydney, and it just floored me. I could barely speak for half an hour at how good it was. Same things happened with Barolo and Barbarescos out of Italy numerous times. They're just amazing, and need some age on them. But I'd say that probably Barolo or Barbaresco would be my kind of go-tos that kind of have those moments where you're like, I'm just going to stop talking now and just focus on how wonderful this is.
So I've got a couple other questions I want to ask. And so Ken on my team is a huge fan of Vinomofo. And as I said, he's always buying wines from you guys. And we've always got these nondescript boxes rocking up at the office. Yeah. He's asked a couple of things. And one that I think is good, which is obviously kind of tying into what you mentioned there, which was you're obviously expanded from Australia. You've got wines coming in from many different places. I know you've done a cool deal with Gary Vee and Empathy and things like that. From having the Australian base, like how did you enter into those markets? Is it purely because that you go, look, we've got tremendous volume of people that we can get you in front of, or like how do you then go and approach those places outside of that? Yeah, that initial network of people that you had, and then kind of step up and out into other areas.
Yeah. So in terms of getting great producers on, you mean?
Yeah, so going out and then bringing those deals through to Vinomofo.
So say in Italy, France, Spain, South Africa, South America, the wines that we bring over there, because our model is so focused in terms of like our list is curated. So instead of like a Woolworths or a Coles and they've got like 20, 30,000 SKUs of wine, we'll have like, 200 at any one time, which means it's super focused, which means the volume that we actually sell is huge compared to everyone else. So even against the big guys, we sell a lot of wine because we're so focused in the premium, super premium end of the market. So that helps when we go to a producer, instead of saying, oh, we'll take 5 cases or 20 cases, which most stores or other players would do of a particular wine, we can buy it all generally. We can go in and go, what have you got left? We'll take it all. And so one, it's the volume play where people are like, oh my God, and rather than having to deal with, 200 different retailers or outlets or players in this space, we can deal with one and they'll move it really, really quickly and they'll be back for more. That's one thing. And 2, we're in, 3 markets. We're in New Zealand, Singapore, and Australia. And so distribution into multiple global markets is very rare in our space. Very few people that can do that, if at all. And so we do that across those different markets. So that's also appealing. We handle all the logistics and stuff ourselves. There's no middlemen. So we go straight to producer. We build great relationships. We cut out all the costs, which means we can sell it at a better price and still give the right margin to the producers. So that's kind of another plus. Things with the Gary V thing was, he's been a mate of mine for ages. And the guy that he's in business with, John Trouty, is a really close friend of mine. And so that's how that came about. They were getting lots of interest from the markets all over the world for their wines, but they couldn't service those markets easily out of the States. Liquor licensing is complicated. So they called me and we'd been looking to try and do something together for ages anyway. And so they were like, oh, how would you feel about that? And I was like, of course, if that means that we get to hang out more and we get to travel, me to the States and you to Australia more, that sounds amazing. So that's how we did that one.
That's cool. I love that. So then going forward for you guys, is there anything kind of, because it sounds like to me, it's like you guys worked really hard and you've got many things all working on the upwards. Is there any kind of big things coming up that you're focusing on that you see kind of changing in and amongst the industry and what you guys have got going on with the way that the world's changing at the moment?
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's so many conversations going on at the moment about that. So I'm really trying to encourage my team to be thinking medium to long term in the current environment and just how much the economy, the market, people's buying behaviors have changed and will forever be changed. I think a lot of people get kind of focused in what do we have to do right now? And, yes, our business is going through the roof at the moment. We're growing really, really quickly. We can barely keep up with buying enough wine because we're selling it so quickly. So we're in a really exciting phase as a business, which feels very weird because a lot of people are struggling right now. So it's just one of those weird things because a lot of people I care about are struggling, but our business is really growing fast. So we're having to cope with that as it is. But then also the industry has completely changed. There's restaurants and bars, wine bars and clubs are all closed right now. So what does that mean? It means that 40 to 60% of the small to medium producers' sales have now been cut to zero, which means they're massively, struggling and they need to find new channels and they're going towards direct to consumer, obviously, because it makes sense. There's high margin and they need to, and it's one of the few channels still available, looking for other partners that can take on more, which is where we come in. So the market has changed. People are adopting online quicker. That's accelerating because they're at home. It's one of the few channels left that they can do. There's health and safety kind of fears around, going out and, the social distancing thing. So all of these are impacting and changing landscape like now. But the funny or more interesting thing is, what does that look like in the medium to long term? Like even when restaurants and bars are back, there'll probably be social distancing restrictions. So that's the kind of medium term. Even it can be back at full steam, we don't know when that is, but even when it can be, I think it's going to have impacted people's behaviors. They're staying at home. They're more conscious of health risks. They're going to be more conscious of crowded places. They're going to be more used to cooking at home, buying online. The distributor and wholesale market would have mostly gone away in the short to medium term. So it's just a different landscape. So what does it look like then? And that's what I'm trying to get the team to think about. What are the opportunities and what are the challenges that are going to happen once this immediate impact is past?
Yeah, No, I think that's great to think about, because obviously for a lot of people, it's very easy to only look at what's in front of you right now or the next couple of months. And then you do have to kind of adapt and adopt towards that. So it's always an interesting one to go see what's going on at the moment. Now, I want to be respectful of your time. And I've got one final question for you here as well, which is, I like to ask this to everyone. What's one question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Maybe about all the stuff I didn't do well.
Give us the top one. What's the top one when you're like, oh, I really didn't do that well?
There was when we got to about 4 or 5 years in, we did a capital raising because, in the first, 3 or 4 years, we were profitable and growing. We didn't need the money. And then we finally decided that we'd take on some money to, grow even faster and take some money off the table. And we raised a big around 25 million. We took 15 off the table, left 10 into the business. So we could, the off the table was to say thank you to early shareholders that had invested and supported us. And then the 10 that went in was going to grow the business globally, which we did, went into New Zealand and Singapore. So they were good moves. But it was also to double down in Australia on marketing. The mistake we made was, rather than doubling down on what we knew, and that was, digital, social, we went kind of above the line for a big chunk of that, because we were convinced that with the above the line, the efficiencies below the line would be so much better and that it would pay for it. Well, it didn't. And we wasted a little bit of that money. And so that was probably one of those decisions where I went against my gut, and we've since learned from. But I guess, as with all these kind of big mistakes that you make through the journey, you learn a lot from them, and we're far better because of it. So yes, it was probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made in business, to go against my gut and go traditional when we'd always been, digitally focused. But like I said, learned so much from it. So do I regret it? Probably not. Well, not fully.
There's always that little bit where you're like,
yeah, I hate it. When people say, oh, no regrets. It's like bullshit.
Some regrets.
Some regrets. Yes, you learned from it. You made the most of it, but there's a little bit there.
Yeah. So again, I thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. If people want to, obviously people can connect and check out, Vinomofo. If they want to connect with you more, is there a better place for them to see more about what you get up to?
Twitter, Facebook, and of course Instagram. It's just Justin Dry.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll put all those links there, and obviously the link to Vinomofo for everyone to check out as well. As I said, I highly recommend it. Everyone on my team seems to buy tons of wine from you guys, so support you guys on that side too. And I think we've got a case of empathy on the way as well, which is awesome. So looking forward to trying that out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think we're just about to release the white and the red in Australia too. So that container's just landed, so that should be up in the next week or two.
Beautiful. Easy done. Well, again, thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure, mate. Great chatting.
Cheers.